Hello and welcome to this screencast on Windows Server 2012. My name is Jeff Alexander. I'm a technical evangelist at Microsoft in Australia. And today I'm going to be talking to you about cluster-aware updating. And before I actually get to showing you what cluster-aware updating is in Server 2012, let's just talk quickly about what the product actually does and what the feature is going to provide. Cluster-aware updating is essentially for administrators to be able to reduce server downtime and user disruption by allowing you to update your clustered servers with little or no loss in availability during updates performed on each of the cluster nodes. CAU, as it's known, transparently takes one of the nodes offline, installs the updates, and performs a restart if necessary, and then brings the node back online and moves on to the next node. And during this time, it is moving any workloads to the best possible node within the cluster itself. It's integrated into your existing Windows update management infrastructure and can be further extended and automated with PowerShell, of course, into further automation initiatives. How CAU works is it facilitates the cluster updating operation while running from a computer running Windows Server 2012 or Windows 8. The computer that's actually running the CAU process is called the orchestrator. CAU supports either two of those following modes. It either supports remote updating mode and self-updating mode. In remote updating mode, you can run this from a Windows 8 client. The computer running this from the cluster is acting as an orchestrator. In self-updating mode, one of the cluster nodes is being updated, acts as the orchestrator, and is capable of self-updating the cluster. So essentially what this allows us to do is to continually to run workloads such as SQL Server highly available workloads. The end-to-end cluster process by way of CAU is cluster aware and is completely automated. It's integrated seamlessly with your existing Windows Update agent and Windows Server Update Services infrastructure if you have that. And it includes a full suite of PowerShell commandlets to actually do that. But while we're actually talking about this, let's have a look at the process. Now, I have a cluster here currently running in my environment. And you can see that I haven't actually run cluster aware updating on this cluster, and we're going to go through this. And how do I actually get to this? I get to this by going to the Tools menu in Server Manager and then going down to Cluster Aware Updating. And that will start the cluster or allow you to go through and configure Cluster Aware Updating's features. But before we do this, before we actually go and configure our Cluster Aware Updating process, let's go and preview some of the updates that we have on this particular set of servers. So essentially what we're doing is we're using a plugin, and this is the Microsoft Windows Update plugin. You can also plug this into other plugins from third parties that in case you wanted to actually do BIOS updates. You can see that we've got the Windows Update plugin and a hotfix plugin if we needed a hotfix for this. Now we're going to go and generate a preview list for this, and the preview list will tell us which updates that we actually need for our cluster. And we'll just wait for this to go and query the cluster, and we'll have a look and see which updates we need. So you can see there's a number of updates that are needed across both of those nodes in the cluster. Now, prior to Windows Server 2012, you would have to go to each server, update that node, and figure out how you're actually going to do that. We're going to go and configure our cluster-aware self-updating by running the wizard to configure self-updating options. So what we can do here is we can go and configure we can add the CAU clustered role with self-updating, and what this will do is go and create a DNS entry for you. So what you can go and pre-stage the object if you wanted to put this into a specific Active Directory OU. We're going to go and use a self-updating schedule. I'm going to do this every Wednesday because we tend to get our updates on a Wednesday. We have some advanced options, and what we're going to do here is we're going to go and use the standard updating process to configure this. And this is our default parameters. I'm going to say that make sure that all nodes are actually online and require that's actually true. And I'm going to use the Microsoft Windows Update plugin for this. We'll click next on that. We're going to go and give recommended updates the same way that I receive same way that I actually receive high security updates and other updates. So we're going to click apply, and through the magic of Camtasia and recording, I'm going to come back to this in a second after this is actually done so that we don't have to sit here and wait for that. Okay, so now we've added our cluster role. That has added a success. And now what we can actually do is we can go and look at the readiness, because we want to actually make sure that this particular cluster is ready to do cluster updating readiness. So let's go and have a look at this particular cluster and have a look at what's going on with this cluster. Okay, so what it's doing now is it's running through a number of different tests saying that the cluster obviously needs to be available. The failover cluster must be enabled for remote management via WMI version 2. So what we need to be able to do is we need to be able to get to each of the clusters through remote management. In Server 2012, we actually enable that by default. So WinRM Quick Config is enabled by default. The required .NET framework is available. The cluster service should be running. It's giving me a bit of a warning on the machine proxy. On each cluster node should be set to a local proxy server. That's just a warning, something that we can actually continue on without. And you can see everything else is actually running, so we can go ahead and start to configure the clusters on this node. So let's go and apply these updates to the cluster. And what we're going to do is we're going to run through the updating of this. So we're going to go and run through our current self-updating run options. We have some additional options. We're obviously going to go and do our recommended updates, and we're going to go ahead and do that. So cluster aware updating has started, and what that allows us to do is to go and view the main through the main console. It's going to go and run our cluster on each of our nodes. So let's go and have a look at what's going on our cluster. So we'll just go and open up our failover cluster manager and connect to this cluster. So let's connect to our cluster. And what we can see on this cluster is that we do have a role that's currently running. We have a highly available file server that's currently running on node 1. And what cluster aware updating allows us to do is to go and update each one of these nodes in our cluster and then move this role to the correct node within the cluster automatically so that we don't lose services. If we go back to our progress here, what we can see is that it is now updating downloading the updates for each of the nodes in the cluster. And then what it's going to go do is apply those updates and configure a reboot on each of those servers as needed. And then if we have, as we can see in the background here, we have this scale out file server currently running on node 1. We're going to move that around. And so what it does is it then enters maintenance mode, and then it's going to go and enter, and you can see up on my cluster that this particular node is in maintenance mode right now, so that it's not serving any clients at this point in time. And then it'll continue to apply that update, and then if there was any workloads currently running on that particular cluster, we would move those over to another compatible node within the cluster, and it would basically do a live migration of migrating that into another node in the cluster. So what you can see here now is that it's waiting right now. It's giving us quite a lot of information in the window at the bottom, telling us what's actually going on, telling me the updates that's currently being provided, and you can see that it goes through each of those particular scenarios, what's going on at this point in time. So on node 2, it's installing updates currently at this point in time. And on node 1, it's downloading updates, and it will wait until the second node is completely finished and has been rebooted. So what we'll do is we'll pause the recording now. We'll come back to see how that particular updating continues on. We'll be back real soon. Okay, so we're kind of moving along here. I wanted to get back to where we are, and what you can see here now is that node 2, we are installing update 8 of 9, and you notice down the bottom here on the screen that it actually tells me that I need to actually I need to actually restart this computer. Traditionally what would happen is that you would have to kind of figure out where you would move your services that are currently running in the cluster. Cluster aware updating will do this for you automatically. So after we've gone and updated and finished installing update 9 of 9, and you can see we're at 88% for this particular scenario, it's going to reboot this particular node. So node 2 will actually get rebooted at this point in time once we're finished installing update 9 of 9. And at the same time, what you can actually see is that we're downloading update 7 of 9 on node 1. And our service that is currently running continues to serve clients. It's, our HA file server is still there, providing the services that it needs to for our customers. So what now you can see is that it's going to go and restart this computer. Okay, so the computer is restarting. So let's just go and have a look at this machine because it's running at a okay, so what you'll actually see is that node 2 will be restarting. Okay, so we should see this node restart. Okay, so it's telling me that the computer is going to be restarted as part of the update process. So we won't worry about that for the time being. And we'll go back to our admin client. So it's telling me that restarting this computer. And what you actually see here now is that you notice that node 1 is waiting. Node 1 is actually waiting until node 2 is back up and running, because what it's going to have to do is it's going to have to actually migrate this particular workload, the HA file server, over to node 2 once that's actually back up online. So what we'll do is we'll wait for that computer to restart, and then we'll come back once it's actually restarted and watch that, that service get migrated over to the other node. Okay, so the computer has restarted now. Let's go back over to our client here, and we'll see what the update is here. So it's going to refresh in a second and tell us that that computer is completely restarted. It's going to check that it can migrate that particular server, that particular service over to node 1. Sorry, no, from node 1 to node 2. Let's go back up here and look at our role. Currently running on node 1. It's telling me that name resolution is not yet available, but it needs to get that service back up. That server will be back up on in a second. All right, so it should be, I might pause here for a second and come back shortly when this actually is finished. Okay, so we succeeded in doing the updates, and unfortunately I missed the live migration, but what you can see here is that node 2 has been succeeded in doing its update. It rebooted one more time. And then what we've done is we've taken our workload, which is the HA file server, and we have migrated that over to node 2 transparently to the users, so the users don't have to worry about their workload actually going down. So now what we see is that node 1 has been put into maintenance mode. So it's entering maintenance mode, and it's going to go ahead and install the rest of those updates. So that's a great way for us to update all of our cluster nodes automatically without having to worry about what's going to go on for the workloads that we currently have running on those. So I'm going to pause that just there, and when we get to the end of this completely successful, I'll close this out and show you some of the reports that we can actually deliver. Okay, so now we've finished both of our updates, and you can see that both of our nodes in our cluster are back up and running. And as part of that process, the cluster we're updating has moved that particular HA file server that I have running back over to node 1, so that it's back on the original node that it started off in the cluster. And you can see that all of our updates have succeeded. So the last piece you're going to want to do is to generate a report telling you how the updates went, what updates were actually applied to those machines. So what you can do is it gives you a run ID. the number of updates that were installed, and it shows you the node that those updates were currently installed. And if you click on one of those updates, you'll get more information about the update itself. And then you can go and export this as a HTML file. So we'll just call this test.html. And then we can go and open that up and have a look at that in an HTML file if we wanted to. And we can also export this as a CSV file so that we can take it into Excel for further reporting. Anyway, so I hope you enjoyed this screencast. This has been an update on the new feature in Windows Server 2012 called cluster-aware updating. What we think it's going to be making the whole process of updating clusters far more easy. Thank you.